Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the RDH Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Chad. Joined alongside me is my brother, Tanner. How's it hanging, dude?
You know, it's going pretty well. If you've been watching, if you've been keeping up with RDH Sports, or if you're new here, because of the recent Mike McDaniel reel, thank you. That is, um, it's nice to see that, our voices don't just get thrown into a void, whenever like we put stuff out there. 'Cause, sometimes you come down here and it's like, oh, we're talking. It's just kind of me and Chad, and it's just like, oh, we're kind of talking to each other, not to anyone else. But it's nice to see when you see something actually get a little bit of traction too, and it's football related too. So it's like it's good to see. Thank you. If you're new here, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. But yeah, I'm doing well. How are you doing,
100,
Chad?
100%. I'm doing good. And just piggyback off of what you said, just like Tanner said, recently, right now, we're the RDH Sports on Instagram. You can find us on Instagram. You can find us on Twitter. Find us on TikTok. And then also, if you're listening on Spotify or watching on YouTube, it's just RDH Sports. So check us out. Weekly sports talk, mostly football. And then we talk a little bit of college football, mostly NFL football. But then in the off season, we turn into a huge college football train. I scout about 150 to 200 athletes. I'm going to get your team ready for the draft. But doing well. This week we're talking about some college football. We're gonna recap the championships. We're gonna talk about the rankings. We almost recorded on Monday, but we didn't because of the rankings. And then we waited for this reason. The college transfer portal right now, it's the biggest in history. I got the top 10 names here according to ESPN. We're going to go over that. As usual, we're going to talk a little bit of football, week 13 recap, and then we're going week 14 matchup preview and picks, and we're going to update the betting listeners how we did last week. Got some messages, so appreciate that. Hopefully we made you a little bit of money if you listened last week. But anyway, let's get right into this college football talk. Championship Saturday matchup recap, real quick, because you've already seen all the matchup recaps, but just going to talk about it. Oregon and Washington. Wow. Oregon came out on top 34-31, but Washington came out on top 34-31. Everybody thought Oregon was going to come out on top, including myself, oh, that's right, Tanner picked Washington. We don't need to talk about that right now anyway. The thing with Oregon is they were heavy favorite into the game. To be honest, when I watched it, I did not think that Washington's defense was going to be the kryptonite of the Oregon team that game, but it was. And I'm not going to get into any of the athletes now because, like I said earlier, if you listen when there's not a whole lot of college football going on, aka next week up until championship week, we got some college football prospect spotlights coming your way. But Washington was just superior on offense. Didn't think that was going to happen. And superior on defense. Didn't think that was going to happen. And that's how you win a football game.
Yeah, I mean, it was hard because it was kind of like the previous matchup that they played, where it's like, okay, well, here goes Washington, bang, bang, touchdown. Here goes Oregon, bang, bang, touchdown. Bo Nix looked really good. I think Michael Penix looked really good too. And it sucks too. I mean, we'll get into the rankings later, but it sucks not to see both of these guys in the playoffs because they both honestly deserve to be there. But Washington took the dub. At the end of the day, and I think it was great. It was deserved. I would say that the score looked close, but Oregon kind of scored that last minute touchdown to kind of make the score a little bit closer than it actually was. They were leading by 10, and Oregon goes down, scores that touchdown to make it the lead 10 with like very little time remaining. Oregon goes down, scores like a quick touchdown. Doesn't get the onside, and that's kind of how it ends. But it sucks. But I think the score is kind of not indicative of how close the game was. I would say, it's a 2-possession game at the end of the day, and Oregon kind of got a garbage time touchdown. No offense, but it's just like that's just kind of how it played out. But Oregon still had an amazing season, in Washington. They're headed to the playoffs. So I think they deserved it. It was well-deserved, Pac-12 champs, for the last time. So it sucks to see if you're an Oregon fan because you were riding this team so hard for the entire year. They were so good, just not good enough, when it came to Washington. But I don't know. I like this Washington team though.
It's a good Huskies team. Like you said, Pac-12 champs, Big 12 jumping there, Oklahoma State versus Texas. 49-21 there. Texas came out on top. We kind of knew that was going to happen. This was one of the more lopsided matchups in terms of rankings before the week came out. So, didn't want to say call this one, but pretty much called this one. Didn't see Quinn Ewers having the best half of, potentially, or not potentially history, best half in history in terms of touchdowns in the first half of that game. And then, he just added 100 yards at the end of that game and got another touchdown to kind of finish it off. So really the story of that game was Quinn Ewers, the quarterback of Texas. And, we'll talk about the whole rankings here in a second. But I mean, Texas just steamrolled them. That game wasn't even close from the beginning. They did not take their foot off the gas, and the Undertaker gave Quinn Ewers the belt. You know what I mean? So have yourself a day,
Yeah,
Quinn Ewers.
that was
You know what I mean?
sick.
Have yourself a day.
I mean, it's hard to say that anyone else could have won. You know what I mean? Like Texas has been really good all year. It was kind of theirs to lose. They played Oklahoma State. It's just one of those things where it's just like, all right, Texas got this one. They had it wrapped up, and I mean, we see what happened. So
With a pretty little burnt orange bow, you know what I mean? SEC championship, Georgia versus Alabama. We talked about this game at length, and one of the scenarios came true. Alabama won 27-24. They took down the Georgia Bulldogs. I mean, not only did I not necessarily see this coming, but I mean, Saban just won that game.
yeah,
You know what I mean? He quite literally just outcoached Kirby Smart. Just flat out coached him in the most critical situations when you needed it. He just outcoached him, called better plays. You know what I mean? That was watching, literally like watching Bill Belichick.
yeah.
In a championship game with Tom Brady. It's just like watching that. You know what I mean? He calls the play. Tom Brady, yes, does what he does, but you're like, it's just superior. You know what I mean? It's just superior. I thought Georgia on paper had it, but they didn't.
Yeah, I mean, you watching that game, and it's like, dang, Alabama's in front like almost the entire time, and it's just like they're kind of dominating right now. Like, what's going on, Georgia? I don't know. Alabama, we said it last week. They're hot. They're getting hot at the right time. Jalen Milroe, he's playing his best football right now. I don't care what you say. He's absolutely playing to one of the best quarterbacks in the country right now. Probably not going to get the Heisman. He's not a finalist, but it's like he's playing really, really well. And going into that game, it's like, okay, what's going to happen? But it's like, I think the bigger team stepped up. I think the better team stepped up. No, in my opinion, too. I think Alabama played almost a perfect game, and Georgia had some mistakes, but it was just like they couldn't hold the domination of Alabama. They've dominated this conference for a while. Georgia had their little stint there the past 2 years, but Bama's back. They're doing what they do.
And you don't want Bama to get hot right now, and they are well above that. They're quite literally on fire.
They're scorching.
Yeah, Big Ten championship. Once again, another lopsided matchup there. Quick recap, Michigan just beat Iowa 26-0. Iowa couldn't get anything going offensively, and Michigan pretty much just ran the ball. You know what I mean? It was on the shoulders of Blake Corum, and they just really, whenever they got in the red zone, they scored. Michigan, I would have liked to see a little bit, more touchdowns, but at the same time, when you beat a team 26-0, and we'll get into what your ranking is in a second, you can't really be mad. You know what I mean? So if you're a Michigan Wolverine fan, you're feeling pretty good right now.
Yeah, I mean, not much to say. They're the best team in college football. You could argue right now. So
100%. ACC championship, Louisville versus Florida State. Florida State takes it 16-6, but one of the most boring games, boring championship games I've ever watched in my life. I'm really glad that that one, or not really glad, but at halftime that one turned to on in the background and doing a little bit of video game action right in front of me, because that was such a boring game. And I mean, what do you got to say about that one? I mean, that it's tough to make your first start as a freshman, you know what I mean, in that position for Florida State, but I mean, that was tough. You know what I mean? That was a tough performance against a Louisville team that was not nearly as close in the rankings as you were. So What did you think about that one?
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about it kind of yesterday or the day before when it happened. You were telling me, you're like, yeah, man, if Louisville had a quarterback, they would have won that game. And I completely agree with you. I think it's justified. With a lower scoring game like this, you don't want to see it, especially in college football, especially with a top four team at the time in Florida State. Like you said, granted they were on like their third string quarterback, but I don't know, man. It's Louisville. You got to go out there and you got to make a splash, especially when it comes to what we know happened afterwards. But they won the ACC. Congrats, they went undefeated. But I mean, we'll get into the rankings earlier because that's pretty much all you got to say with Florida State, right?
And just diving right into the rankings right now.
Yeah.
We're gonna discuss the top eight. Michigan number one, no losses. Washington number two, no losses. Texas, one loss. Alabama, one loss. Florida State, no losses at five. Georgia at six with one loss. Ohio State at seven with one loss. And Oregon at eight with two losses. And that's the first two-loss team. So jumping right into it, Michigan, not a surprise there at all that
No.
they're number one. Not a surprise. That game was not even close, and Iowa never was a threat at any point in that game, and they beat Ohio State. So Michigan number one. Anything to say there, or just kind of like meh? They got that one right.
They got it right. Like I said, they're the best team in the country. They showed it. They got the best running back in the country. They showed it. It's pretty cut and dry on that one.
Washington number two. You know, I really can't argue with that one at all either. They beat Oregon, and like you said, it was not a close game, even though the score was close. Washington just looked better on both sides of the ball, like we just mentioned. So, and also they don't have a loss, so
Mm-hmm.
there's no losses there. They beat Oregon twice, and they've played a pretty not solid schedule, but not a bad schedule. You know what I mean? I
Mm-hmm.
would say their strength of schedule is nowhere near SEC, but it's still a pretty decent strength of schedule
It's
whenever
pretty
you look who
tough.
they're playing.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
it's
I think it's
it's
really
pretty tough.
tough. I mean, the Pac-12 was good this year. That's just kind of like the
Really
theme
good.
of college football this year. They were good this year, um, and you got to play a lot of really good teams, and they struggled at points, yes, but at the same time, they won it. You know what I mean? They won it. They won arguably one of the hardest conferences in college football this year, if not the hardest. So it's like, yeah, I understand. Number two, give it to them.
Number three, University of Texas with one loss. Take it from here, Tanner.
I I'm really not surprised, and I'll say I'm kind of flipping on you. You and I talked like yesterday or 2 days again about this, but upon thinking about it, upon like really looking at like kind of what Texas has done over the season, they absolutely deserve it. This is I've been saying it since the beginning of the year. Back since when they beat Rice, it was just like this is a dominant football team. They're going to go out there every week and they're going to continue to do this. And I mean, the biggest game of the year was was Alabama. They beat Alabama, and Alabama is looking like a really good football team right now. So I want to combine this conversation with the Alabama at number 4 because it's like you can't put Bama at 4 and Texas any lower than that. If you want Bama in the playoffs, you have to put Texas at 3. You have to put them above them just because they beat Bama. So it's like, okay, so Texas has to go above Bama. At that point, it's like, okay, what do we do about Florida State? We're going to get into it. I don't know. With the whole Florida State debacle, it's like I can really see both sides of it. Like I said, Florida State won the ACC, 13-0, undefeated season. They won a Power 5 conference. They should be in the playoffs. But from the other side of it, I mean, you can't tell me that Texas and Alabama aren't right now better football teams than Florida State.
They would steamroll them.
Exactly. Like if they played in the
It
matchup,
wouldn't even be close.
it wouldn't be close. So it's like, what do you want? Do you want the better teams in the playoffs, or do you want the team that mathematically, technically should be in the playoffs? I get it. I understand. If you're Florida State, you should be pissed because that's a snub. It's probably the biggest snub of all time. But the college football playoffs
Yeah.
aren't fair. They're not fair, and they don't play by the rules. It's a league that's dominated by the big names, the Alabamas, the Texas. You saw it here first, and that's just kind of how it's going to be. That's kind of how it always has been. It sucks to see, but I really think we got the best 4 teams out of it. As much as it sucks to say for Florida State, but I really do, and I think the playoffs are going to be, probably the best that they might ever have been. I mean, this is one of the most loaded I've ever seen the playoffs. I mean, these guys, I could make a case for each one of these teams winning the national championship, So it's going to be fun. I understand why they did it. I'll say that. I don't know. What do you got on it?
To address Texas at 3, they had one game against Oklahoma where they lost. Flat out, they lost. They did not show up. They did not look like the same team that they had every other week. But Texas has also had a lot of close games. I mean, not necessarily a few close games, but like, this is me trying to nitpick them, right? But then you go look at what they did at the games they won, which is pretty much every game aside from a literal couple. You know what I mean? They lost only one game and they played a couple other close games. So it's like, I'm trying to put my mind into what the college committee's doing, right? I'm putting that cap on, right? The college committee cap. With Texas there, you have to look at that loss. They almost won. Yeah. They almost beat Oklahoma. They literally just beat themselves. Okay. And what Oklahoma did the rest of that season does not make that loss look good. But they just threw up a stinker that week, right? Go look at Washington at number 2. They had a couple close games. And if you listen to last podcast, we were talking about how they almost lost a couple weeks prior to that game. So it's the exact same argument there at 2 and 3. So I understand that they're in, and I completely agree that they're in. And oh, by the way, they may have one of the best quarterbacks in the country at this moment in time. If Quinn Ewers plays like he did against Oklahoma State, I don't know who's going to beat him.
Yeah.
Because you have number 1 at number 4 with Michigan and Alabama, and then you have Washington at Texas. Washington looked really good last week against Oregon, but Bo Nix was struggling, and Quinn Ewers was not struggling. You know what I mean? He broke the record for most touchdowns in a half in a Big 12 championship game, right? He's on fire right now, and guess what? He's not playing Alabama, and he's not playing Michigan, which those defenses at times have looked unstoppable. Alabama for sure unstoppable. Michigan not as much, right? So I agree with Texas at 3. Alabama at 4 over Florida State and Georgia. Georgia, they beat head-to-head by. There they go.
Yeah.
Okay? I know last week we were talking about it, and we were saying there's no way Georgia goes out. Thought about it a little bit. I'll admit when I'm wrong. You know what I mean? Always do. But that one's still a hard pill to swallow because Georgia had one bad game this season, and that was against Alabama. A couple close games, too.
And even then, they only lost by 3 at that point.
They only lost by 3 at that point. It was just a field goal game. Here's the thing. This is number 4. You cannot say that a no-loss team does not belong there at number 5, Florida State. I'm going to get into it, but they're sitting there at number 5. You cannot put Georgia above Florida State. You cannot put Alabama above Florida State. You can interchange both those teams, but here's the thing. Alabama won the head-to-head. So Georgia goes away. Then it goes to Florida State and Alabama. And I'll stick on the argument that I just said. It's very simple. They would steamroll Florida State, in my opinion, because of the inconsistent play at quarterback. I understand the argument that their backup quarterback that was in concussion protocol would be available to play. I get that. I understand that. But you're playing Michigan.
Yeah.
You're playing Michigan, the best team in the country. I'm sorry, I don't think that would be a good game. But I understand why Florida State is mad because they quite literally could not have done anything else. If they scored one more touchdown or 2 more touchdowns, they probably would have been in. They probably would have been in if they scored 2 more touchdowns, but they could not move the ball on a Louisville team that is not good defensively. You're telling me they're going to go up against Michigan, Washington, and Texas? No, there's no shot. I'm sorry. There's no shot. Now, here's the thing. Last thing I'll say on Florida State being at number 5. It sucks. It sucks. And it is the biggest snub. It is the biggest snub, bar none. It's the biggest snub. You can't say that A&M, when Johnny Manziel was there, was a bigger snub because they had 2 losses on their schedule. Florida State's got a goose egg. You know what I mean? And that was also when it was only 2 teams, not 4 teams. So I'm sorry, Florida State. You'll do it again next year. Not really. Your quarterback's going. But, I feel bad because, like I said, there's nothing more they could have done that game aside from maybe get 1 or 2 more touchdowns. But they weren't moving the ball. So I understand the decision of the committee. But if I'm a Florida State fan or if I went to school there, I'm so mad. I'm so mad. You know what I mean? I'm livid. Now, Georgia's sitting there at number 6. They beat Ohio State there at number 7. I agree with that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I completely agree with that. I think if Georgia and Ohio State played each other, I do think Georgia would take that game. And then Oregon sits there at number 8 with the first 2 losses. Team sitting there at number 8. So, I mean, next time we're going to talk about these teams, aside from when we talk about when we hit the college football prospect spotlight, is whenever we're picking winners. In the games that are going to be matched up at the end of December. It's going to be, like Tanner said, I think the best college football playoff we've had, and I think that's because you put Alabama in there at number 4.
Yeah.
Anything else you got to say, or should we move on to the transfer portal?
I think you just got it right on the head. I mean, you just don't. If you're the college football playoff, you don't. And this is no rag on last year's playoffs, but you remember that final game where it was TCU and Georgia, and it was just like, what are we doing? You know what I mean? Like, what are we doing here? It's just like, what? This is not fun. No offense, but it's just like they got steamrolled. It just wasn't really competitive. Georgia put up like 60 on them. I just don't think they want that to happen again. And that I think they're kind of a little bit scarred with that. Granted, TCU is probably a better football team than Florida State is right now. Last year at this point, because they had a full roster, but I don't know, man. It's like you said, it sucks for Florida State, but
it's all money.
It's all money, and can you
it's
really,
all money. That's all
really
it
blame
is.
them?
Alabama's going to bring in a lot more money than Florida State, and Texas is
so
going to
much
bring
money.
in more money
so much
than
money.
Probably any other program in the country. So it's like, is it the best teams or is it the best record? Because
it kind of seems
1
like
and 2, they both don't have. You know what I mean? So yeah, exactly what you said. So it's hard. You're not right and you're not wrong, but I guess you're wrong.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I mean, luckily we won't be having this big of a debate, this big of a snub, debacle, whatever in the future, because college football playoffs is moving to 12 teams. So if you're going to get in, you deserve to get in. You know what I mean? If you're number 13, sorry, but it's like you should have been one of the other 12. So if you're at that point in the season, there's a lot more things you can nitpick on, I think, than Florida State, especially since they went undefeated. If you're undefeated, you're not going to be sitting there at 13. So it sucks, but luckily we probably won't see this kind of reaction and this kind of decision again.
Yeah. Yeah. Jump into the college transfer portal. We're going to hit on it. ESPN has a great thing right now. One of their articles that's going right now. It's like a live article, but there's 10 guys that they put on there, and it's pretty spot on, I would say. But I wanted to add one more to the list, so we're going to talk about that real quick. And I just gotta read this tweet from Evan Stewart, the 5-star prospect from Texas A&M. This guy tweeted at him, the Bobby Taylor. He said, "No way 2 years ago you could have told me Jimbo would be fired, coaches leave, and half the class dip. How that happened?" Evan Stewart responded and said, "I saw it coming freshman year when I didn't get paid $1 from A&M, but in parentheses, sliced bread. Had y'all thinking we was all millionaires." That's not a good look.
No,
first of all, A&M. That's a bad look. And second of all, I mean, that's not only a bad look, that's like they're going to get in trouble for that. You know what I mean? Or they could potentially get in trouble for that because I mean it's like it's their money. You know what I mean? I don't understand how you would. I just don't understand that, right? Like obviously there's a lot to unpack there. You know what I mean? But I don't think that Evan Stewart would just come out of nowhere and you know what I mean and just make up false information. But at the same time, it's like the guy that tweeted it 100% completely agree with you. Couldn't have been more accurate if you would ask that 2 years ago. But then you see a tweet like that from Evan Stewart. I mean, what do you think about that?
I think he's dead on, and I think you've been seeing it the past couple years with A&M, and people are just kind of deciding to hide it under the rug. If you're Aggie fans, you know it's just there's not a good locker room at Texas A&M, and when Jimbo was there, I get it. You know they were a decent football team at times, and they were good at other times. There was not a good locker room there. You know, you kept seeing it over and over and over. Off-season issues. Evan Stewart would get into this, and then something would happen here. Off-the-field issue here. Doesn't happen at Bama. Doesn't happen at Michigan. Doesn't happen at these top 4 schools. You know, you're there to play football. You know, and they're going to get you there, and they're going to give you everything that you need to play football. A&M is kind of treating
succeed scholastically. Come on.
Yeah, very, very well scholastically and educationally. I agree very much.
Thank you.
But at A&M, I don't know what they're doing. You know, it's not. I don't want to bash A&M because I think that they've done a really good job in the past couple of years.
Yeah, we're not. But we're not bashing A&M. We're both Aggies, but Tanner and I call it like we see it. You know, if Cowboys play like shit, we talk about it, and you can't not talk about this. So keep going, Tim.
I mean, look at how many transfers they're losing. You know, look at how many kids are going in the transfer portal.
Half of the class that was the best class of all time is now in the transfer portal and/or said they're going to be in the transfer portal for right now.
And not to mention, they're losing recruits. I think they just lost the number 1 receiver in the nation.
They did.
To Auburn.
He decommitted.
Auburn. I'm sorry. Auburn. They lost, and they were like 6-6, dude. It's bad. It's really bad. That's not a that's not a coaching thing. That's a culture thing. And I really hope, you know, they go in there and they change the culture because this has been going on for way too long here at A&M. It seems like a player's nightmare if you're coming here. And I feel like it has been for a while. You know, go look at Kyler Murray. You know, granted he was kind of Kyle Allen. He transferred out too, and he's in the NFL now, which is fun. I don't know where he is, by the way, but it just doesn't look good at all on this coaching staff, on the organization, on the donors, on A&M as a school. They just keep getting it wrong. And it's not a hard issue, I don't think. I think you just need to do what you're supposed to do. You got to pay your players, and you just need quality, someone who's going in there and change the culture. You know, I thought Jimbo would do that, and I thought he would do that pretty well, but I guess not. I don't know. Did the players respect him? I think so. I think they respected him, but there's a lot of other stuff that is kind of coming out now that's kind of saying that they didn't. So, I mean. Know.
When you are quite literally a 4 or 5-star, even 3-star prospect out of high school, you know, you're getting recruited by big schools. And now with the NIL, when I was in school, when I graduated in 2018, players weren't able to be paid. Mm-hmm. You know, Reggie Bush got his Heisman taken away from him because he got paid in college. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Can you imagine how much money Johnny Manziel would have made? You know what I mean?
If how much he did make under the covers, you know.
Well, I mean, go look at the documentary on Netflix. It's incredible.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Yes, it is a culture thing. With new coaching and new coaching staffs, change culture. That's what happens. New players change culture. Every year in college football, you got to remember, these are most likely between 18 and 22, 23-year-old, wait for it, kids. But these are kids.
But I really don't think that's an excuse. I mean, I'm sorry.
No, it's not. No, it's not. But what I'm saying is that clearly the culture at A&M was not what any of these kids needed. Because if you have that many transfers leaving, half of a recruiting class leaving, and like you said, all of the other names we just mentioned year over year in terms of just quarterbacks, and we haven't even gone into anybody else, there is a definite culture problem. There's 100% a culture problem. But how do you fix that culture? Right? How do you fix that culture? Because with Kevin Sumlin, you can argue now that you look back and you're like, well, some of that wasn't very good. You know what I mean? There was a lot of off the field stuff that was going on, right? Every school is going to have off the field stuff going on, because I understand you say you can't base the whole argument on it, but like, once again, they're 18, 19-year-old kids. I'm sorry. So they're not even old enough to drink.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And you're putting them out in front of 50 to 100,000 fans. And now they can make millions. You know what I mean? There has to be programs in place to help these kids. I mean, if you look at the NFL, with how many of the NFL players are broke, or across professional leagues that are broke in terms of money management, like, you have to look into that. And not only does it clearly say that you don't even get to have the money management because you're not paying the players. You know what I mean? It's like, I came here to this school to get an education and to play football and to potentially go to the NFL. I got one of those. I don't know if I'm getting playing time. And where's my money? You know what I mean? It's not only, we'll see what happens when it comes out, like whenever, it gets investigated a whole lot more with everything. But if that isn't in fact true, any college in the country, that's unacceptable.
It is.
You know what I mean? That's completely unacceptable, and that's not what A&M is about.
Especially, yeah, exactly. Especially from a school like A&M, who, again, no offense to the school or anything like that, but they have loads of money. They got donors coming out the ass when it comes for A&M. I mean, just go to the campus, go to the the new stuff they're building constantly. They have money. It's not like they're broke. They can pay these players. Why they don't choose to, I don't know. With your point when it comes to, like, they're 18 to 22, 23-year-old players. Yeah, I get that. I understand that. But again, you don't see it happening at Alabama because Nick Saban's culture. But if they do,
you do
they're
see
benched.
it happening.
There's someone ready to come up and
that's exactly what I was going to say.
And play better than them. I think it's that next man up mentality. Your spot's not safe. At A&M, I think it's kind of like, oh, I can kind of, rattle off. I can go over here and do this, and I can not really pay attention. Evan Stewart, he didn't go to the last practice, I think, of the season or something like that. And it was like, I don't blame him. Why would you? Who cares? This team's not. They're barely bowl eligible. I'm not gonna watch it. Sorry, but it's like, who cares? You're not competing for anything at this point. It's almost like a meaningless season. You're 7-5, so it's like, who cares? There's no culture. There's no threat of your spot being taken if you're Evan Stewart. He could. It's like Johnny when he was here. He never tried to get better. He was just relying on himself and his talent at the time, and at that point, his talent was pretty good. He didn't really need to gain an upper leg on the competition, But you see these other schools, you see these culture schools where it's just like work ethic is just high above the rest. Like I said, the Alabamas, the Ohio States, the Michigans, the big name schools where they've been doing this for a long, long time. How do you get to that point? Someone's got to come in, a new coach, and hopefully Elko can do that for us. But someone's got to come in. Someone's got to cement that culture and say, if you're doing stuff like this, if you're off the field stuff is contributing to you missing practice, contributing to you playing poorly on the field, I think that warrants, maybe a punishment, stuff like that. It's just it just kind of seems like nobody really takes it seriously if you're playing football at A&M, even though they're behind big time coach Jimbo Fisher, even though they're behind one of the I would say one of the wealthier programs in the NCAA. So it's like, I don't know. It's a mystery to me why everything is so wrong at A&M, because they have everything in their toolkit, I think, to succeed. But
I think clearly, you can't really pin it on the head. Maybe in 5-10 years, you'll be able to pin it on the head when everything's completely changed and the program is around. I mean, here's the reality: Texas and Oklahoma are coming to the SEC. A&M is going to be competing at the tippy top of the level. You know what I mean? And you look at games this year, and I understand how you said there was points where they don't try. I mean, maybe in practice, I don't know. You know what I mean? We don't know what was going on in the practice field.
Yeah,
when they're on the field, There are definitely times where it seems like you may see him give up a little bit, but I wouldn't necessarily say they wouldn't be trying. And I also think that to put a pin in this too, this isn't every player on A&M.
No, of course not.
You know what I mean? This is just a select few players, and the fact that we're just calling this out just because of that tweet. But here's the thing, and we'll be done with it. We got a pretty good insight into this. I went and saw every home football game. You went and saw every home football game. I was there when they redid the entire stadium. You were there when they redid parts of the stadium. You know what I mean? You were on the field at times. A lot of stuff, right? A lot of stuff there. I think it's going to get changed very quickly. First of all, second of all, we'll see if the new head coach of Elko is the guy to do it. We will see, right? Last thing on that, none of these guys in the locker room currently that are here are going to be here in the next 3-4 years, right? You got a completely new class coming in, and that's what happens with college football, right? That's what happens with college football. You get waves. You get waves of players every year, and we'll see what happens after this. This transfer portal, because there is so many big names that are in this transfer portal that can change a program with a blink of a hat, blink of an eye. It can change completely. And Elko is not necessarily the head coach for Texas A&M. Is not necessarily the most offensive-minded guy. Is more of a defensive-minded guy. And I was talking to Brad last week, and he was telling me, I think A&M is going to be, solid as long as they bring in the right offensive guys. Completely agree. And we will see what happens, because they're still hiring coaches as we speak. And guess what? Yeah, they were 7-5, but at the same time, there were some of those games that they could have easily won.
Yeah.
And in this season, they could only have a 3-loss season. And then you look at that and you go, well, Oregon lost twice. A&M only lost 3 times. It's not that bad of a season. You know what I mean? A lot of those games were toss-ups at points. They just didn't convert when they needed to. And next year, it could be a completely different football team. Look what happened with Texas. You know what I mean? 3 years ago. Look at Texas 3 years ago, right? And look at Texas right now. They have the potential to win the national championship. Now, whole lot of talk about A&M. Did not think it was going to take that much time, but hey, why not? You know what I mean? We ramble for a reason.
I forgot that tweet was out there, because I remember I saw it on Twitter and I was like, what the heck? Why is Evan Stewart saying that? But you mentioned that, I was like, oh, that's right. I forgot he said that. But yeah, continue.
Yeah, and once again, we both went to school at A&M. Love A&M. Just sometimes we go to call like see it. You know what I mean? And guess what? We're a podcast. That's what we do. College transfer portal. My goodness. Okay, here we go. If you need a quarterback, you got a lot. You know what I mean? You got a lot of them. You got like 7 of these guys right here.
There's literally 7.
So it is the biggest transfer portal in history. It's not even close right now. Tanner and I have actually had the pleasure of watching one of these kids too in person, which was nice. And he beat the jersey that I got on here. Dylan Gabriel, the quarterback from Oklahoma, senior, is arguably the biggest name on that list. He's in the transfer portal. That alone is going to just bring headlines. Cameron Ward, the quarterback from Washington State, he's a junior. Riley Leonard, the quarterback from Duke, who's a junior, who is where Elko came from. You know what I mean? So that's an interesting one. That's one that if you look at and you go, that could potentially be a landing spot for him at A&M. Who knows? Then you've got the UCLA freshman, Dante Moore. He is a freshman. This might not necessarily be a kid that's ready to take over and take the program by storm right now, but he's a freshman, and he can be ready easily at some point in his sophomore year. So that's a very big name. And once again, if your team needs a quarterback, this is a good one. Then we've got Will Howard, the quarterback from Kansas State. He's a senior. Then we're jumping into the defensive side of the ball. Joey Slackman, he's a defensive tackle from Pennsylvania, senior. I have no idea how to say. We talk about the Oregon State Beavers all the time on this podcast. They became, I don't know why this year, but why not? DJ, the quarterback there. Not even going to try it.
DJU.
And what?
I said DJU.
Thank you, DJU.
That's all you got.
Junior, and he's played incredible this season. Like I said, I've watched a lot of Oregon State games this year, more than I've ever watched, and he looks pretty solid. That's why he's in the top 10 in this list, right? And then We got Grayson McCall, the quarterback from Coastal Carolina, who's a senior. We have Alan Heron, the offensive lineman, who is from Shorter University. They're a Division II school, and he's a sophomore. In a lot of major teams are talking to him. This is the biggest offensive lineman in the transfer portal. Once again, he's a sophomore, which means you got him for at least a couple more years. So that's a huge name. And then last one, another defensive tackle I had to. His name's Thor Griffin. He's from Harvard, and he's a senior. So that is you can't not bring his name up. But, I mean, what do you think about that? That is 7 quarterbacks that can easily start at 6 quarterbacks, I'd say right now, that can easily start it not any program, but a lot of programs. It's a lot. This is a lot. And this could turn a team around just like that. You saw Joe Burrow in the transfer portal, right? Caleb Williams in the transfer portal. You got a lot, right? What can happen? You know what I mean? What can happen with these guys?
You really don't know. I mean, like, you hit it on the head. I mean, Joe Burrow, Caleb Williams. It's just like you go transfer, you go start somewhere else, and you make a name for yourself. I mean, go look at Jalen Hurts now in the NFL. It's just like these things just happen. You kind of get a chip on your shoulder when you get into that portal, and so it's like I like it. You gotta take a shot on yourself, take a chance on yourself, especially in the leagues of college football, because you need a spotlight, and I love what these guys are doing. So I'm a fan.
Yeah, and the article, it's on ESPN. Just go to the news section on college football. It's College Football Transfer Portal 2023 live updates and news, and it's ESPN staff. So didn't necessarily have a specific one there, but had to call that out. Jumping to NFL. Dallas Cowboys. We're really going to talk about them in a little bit because who they played this weekend. But just Dak.
What a game.
You scared me there with Seattle. You scared me. I thought Geno was going to potentially steal one, but that offense just did not stop. And my favorite point of this entire season so far, Jake Ferguson scores a touchdown right after one of my most favorite safeties out of LSU, Jamal Adams. Go look at his college tape. My goodness, he looks like Brian Dawkins. He was talking a whole lot of shit to Jake Ferguson on one play, and then the next, it was either the next play or the next series of plays, he scores a touchdown on him. And if you look at CeeDee Lamb, he's like sprinting and pointing at him as he runs. My favorite, I lost it when I saw that. That was my favorite point of this entire season. And obviously Dak's cadence whenever he calls any play, I love it. But what did you think about the game? The defense looked very shaky, is what I'll say.
I think so. I mean, just to hit on your Ferguson point, we're reaping the benefits of letting Dalton Schultz walk. I don't know how much more production you could really want out of this young guy. I don't know why he really likes to jump over people. It's reminding me of some Zeke back in his early years. He's got bunnies. He's got some hops. He's like,
huge.
Come on. I don't know. I've seen, like I said, Zeke do that. That was impressive. But this guy's a tight end. He's a lot bigger than Zeke was. But, yeah, Ferguson looks really good. Just to touch on the whole game, the defense, that was surprising. I was not expecting Seattle to come out after them losing to the Niners, I think, in the previous week, where they looked really, really not great. And then Geno just turned it on. DK had 3 touchdowns. We got to talk about Deron Bland, because I think last week we were like, oh, man, he's like, top 3 in MVP voting. Yeah, that ship sailed real quick. No offense. But
you got to beat like a drum.
He had one good play, and that was the pick. And even then, it was a contested catch. But he got beat real bad. He got beat real bad.
Like 200-plus yards against him, just him.
Yeah, and it got so bad that
pass interference.
Yeah, it got so bad that they started switching it up, and he did not see any single look, I don't think, the rest of the night. So, yeah, he was getting beat by, I think, all 3 Seattle receivers. And it was like, DK, yeah, let's not put him on there. Tyler Lockett didn't get involved much, but he was getting beat there too. And Jackson Smith and Jigba, he was schooling him. But I will say, Jordan Lewis looked really good for the Cowboys, which is something we haven't seen in a while. I was really happy to see that in the game. But touching on the whole defense, they're going to have stinkers. The defense is not perfect. They're not the best in the NFL. At least I don't think. They will have stinkers, and this is an example of a stinker. But they showed up when it mattered. At the end of the game, stopped them on a couple drives, stopped them on that last drive, and Micah finally showed up at the end of the game. That's what you want to see from a generational player, and he stepped up. He did that. It's just those big moments, and the defense seemed to continue to do it in those big moments. And previously in the past, we hadn't seen Dallas's offense rise to the occasion, but this game changed it all. I mean, you look at Dak. He's playing like one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL right now. I know we beat this drum a lot during the season, but he really is. And the difference between this Cowboys team and the Cowboys team we saw last year is the offensive play calling and the offensive production. You can beat up bad teams. You can put 40 on bad teams. But when it comes to good teams, and I'll say Seattle's a good team, you got to put up points. And dang it, they put up 40, And it wasn't the defense. It wasn't at all the defense. It was all the offense. It was all Dak Prescott. He made huge throws. He stood in the pocket all night long, shoved off tackles, extended plays, and looked like the Dak Prescott of old. And he's doing it week in and week out. And this is Dak Prescott's win. If you got to give it to anyone, this is his game. This was his game to show everyone, I'm here, I'm for real. Hopefully he continues to do it because we got a lot of tough games down the stretch. But, yeah, that's pretty much it. There was a lot of penalties, though. There was a ton of penalties, which was like, what is going on here? But overall, good game. I was scared, very scared. But they pulled out the win.
There was a lot of yelling involved for sure. We'll get more into them in a little bit here, but Browns recap. Joe Flacco went out there and just gave it his all, and it really wasn't that close. You know what I mean?
Hey! I actually have a different opinion because I think
I just said that to get you riled up.
It was you riled me up a little bit. I think Joe Flacco went out there and I think he played pretty well. Considering the situation that the Browns are in, he's technically their fourth string. He comes up from the practice squad with Dorian Thompson-Robinson being the quote-unquote starter for that game, but he's in concussion protocol, I think. But Joe Flacco goes out there, and honestly, the Browns' pass game looked like the best it has all year, and that's including Deshaun Watson. So it's like it was refreshing too because he's putting the ball on the money on these longer throws. It's not getting caught in the dirt. It's not getting caught up with plays taking too long. He's pretty good. I think he's still got a lot in him. But I think the big thing, too, is just he hasn't been with them very long. A lot of times he was forcing the ball downfield. Just I know Flacco's a gunslinger. I know he's got an arm on him, and he still does. Trust me, I was watching it. But, it's not the game plan. I don't think you need to throw that many times down the field because it just really wasn't working that well. Give him some more time with the offense. Give him some more time in that system. I think he'll do a lot better. So hopefully we'll see a bounce-back game next week. But I think the big part in the game was when there's like 8 minutes left. Flacco rips the ball downfield, and it's basically a punt. They interception. Bang, that hurts. You're down by 1 at this point if you're Cleveland. The Rams go down, score a touchdown. Cleveland comes back. You're down by 8. They go out and they turn it over on downs. Ugh. Rams go down and score a touchdown. Ugh. Now you're down by 15. And there's less than like 8 minutes left. Probably about 6 or 5 minutes left. They take a safety at the end of the game, and it's like, oh, the culmination of this game just kind of came down to the end. They just kind of shot themselves in the foot a little bit. But I think there's a lot of promise and a lot of hope with Joe Flacco going forward. Like I said, I think it's the best this offense has looked all season. And, defense got to play a little bit better, but offense put them in some tough positions.
And then jump into the Eagles and the 49ers recap. Once again, we're going to talk Eagles here in a little bit, but wow. That one, if you listen to the last pod, we were talking about it, and I said I have a feeling, the 49ers are going to come out there and win the game, and they did. The 49ers have the best roster in all of football. You can't really argue it. And the thing with Philly is that their linebacking core is just not there. You know what I mean? Because of injuries and what they have going on right now. So 49ers exploited that, and Deebo Samuel had one of those games. You know what I mean? It's one of those things where they have 3 names on that team that can hit off and can quite literally run a game and win a game by themselves with George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, and Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey had a really good game, and Deebo had an even better game.
Mm-hmm.
And Brock Purdy was hitting on all cylinders against that defense. The cornerbacks just did not match up against them. The linebackers and the safeties could not keep up with George Kittle either. It was just a dominant performance by the 49ers. At the beginning of the game, the Eagles were holding right on to them, and it looked like it was going to be a back and forth game. And you didn't really think that the 49ers were going to go out there and just destroy them kind of at the end like they did. But the 49ers, it was a revenge game from last year when they lost in the playoffs. So the 49ers took that energy and won. And I'm not sure this is the last time. We'll see these teams matched up. We'll see what happens in the playoffs this year. But the Eagles finally get that second loss. Jalen Hurts looked human for once this season, right? And 49ers, man, they're now the best team in the NFC. You can't say that they're not. Eagles are probably sitting there at number 2. Dallas is probably sitting there at number 3. With that recent Detroit loss to the Packers. So, what did you think about that game? Another RDH Sports call there.
Yeah, I think I picked Philly on that one. Funny enough, but it's the Niners' magic. Like you said, they got the best roster and they got one of the best offensive lines. I think you can't really argue now because they took it to Philly all night long. And Philly, like we said in the past, has got historically one of the best defensive lines in football. They just kind of manhandled them. Trent Williams went in there and was just like, mine. Mine. It's just they ran to the left with Christian McCaffrey all night. They ran to the right. It didn't really matter either. So I'm not really sure. The Niners were just the better team on that night. I don't know if it's just a blip on Philly's schedule. We'll see. Come this Sunday night with Dallas, we'll see if Dallas can take another one off of them. But no, man, the Niners are amazing. And I don't think there's any other word to describe them. They're the best team in the NFL. I would put them at number 1 right now, and they just absolutely manhandled the Philadelphia Eagles, and it wasn't really close. And I think that's just what happens when you have to cover that many options. Deebo is just that good. When it comes to
their defense is that good.
Not even to mention their defense. I'll say Nick Bosa kind of got held in check. He didn't have like a hugest game, but again, Philly's offensive line is good, and Philly just needed to get more touchdowns. As much as it sucks to say, you can't go down there, you can't get field goals, you got to score when it matters. I think it was like 6-0 at one point. The Niners go like 3 and out like twice. They go down and score a touchdown, then bam, they're winning. It's just like you don't want to see that. Philly dominates the entire like first quarter, and the Niners come roaring back. But it was complete domination from the Niners, and I'm okay with it. I think it's pretty cool. I think for once in my life, I was rooting for the Niners. But yeah, I don't know. There's not much to say because I think that we've all kind of known that they were this good. We were just kind of waiting for them to show it. And Brock Purdy's that guy. I think everyone can finally agree that Brock Purdy is not just the product of Kyle Shanahan and his system. I get it. There's a lot of naysayers out there, but he's doing this week in and week out. He was a little rough during the season earlier, but he's back on it. He just beat the best team in the NFL. So the Niners are now at number 1 spot. I don't know. It's going to be hard to beat this Niners team. I'm kind of glad the Cowboys already lost to them. So
we'll see what happens with that. But I think that the Cowboys and the Eagles play this weekend. We're going to hit on it in the matchup preview and pick section. We'll jump into it more there. But next, Zach Wilson. I had to write this one down. Quoting, quote unquote, reluctant to take back the quarterback starting job. I don't know if I've ever seen that. First of all, I'm not sure not sure I've ever seen that from anywhere. You know what I mean? In terms of just not like it to me, the way it sounded like whenever I went back and watched it was just kind of like he didn't really want to play. And he is really not doing himself any favors, especially with that fan base. There's already been so much stuff stirred up with him in Jets fans, you know what I mean, with stuff he said in the past and everything. I didn't really like him coming out of BYU. I didn't think he was going to be. I thought he was a poor man's Johnny Manziel. I think that's exactly what I said a couple of
Yikes.
years ago whenever he came into the draft. But hey, I don't really understand it. You know what I mean? That one, I don't know. You know what I mean? But we'll see what happens, and we'll see if he comes back and is the starter, or probably more likely goes somewhere else, and is really going to get into that honestly backup role if he doesn't like really start to elevate his game.
Dude, I mean, not even backup, like third string. There's
Practice squad.
there's one thing that we've talked about on this podcast that I think is just really, really important if you're especially a quarterback in the NFL. It's confidence. You have to have confidence in the NFL if you're a starting position, any of them, especially the quarterback position. And he has no confidence. He's gone out there and he's made no offense, but he's made a fool of himself the past couple weeks when he started. So it's just I understand like where he's coming from, but it's definitely a new thing to see where he's just I don't really want it. It just sounds like he's kind of given up already. It kind of sounds like he's like, oh, well, whatever. So if I'm if I'm if I'm not coaching staff, I'm not going to put him in because you're only going to make things worse. I would keep rolling with Tim Boyle. I'm sure you're losing games, but like, do you want Zach Wilson going out there with zero confidence and playing even worse? So it's a really tough position to be in if you're the Jets, but I would not want Zach Wilson going out there and kind of half-assing it. You know what I mean?
100%. To a better note, Mike Evans, fellow Aggie, 10 total seasons with 1K receiving yards, Super Bowl champ as well. Has this man entered the Hall of Fame discussion? He's about, I think, 6 to 7 seasons off from old Jerry Rice's record of 16 1,000-yard seasons. But I mean, he's got double-digit 1,000-yard seasons with like 7 different quarterbacks.
Yeah.
This guy's insane, and he's been doing it for 10 seasons.
I mean I think he holds the record for consecutive 1,000-yard seasons to begin a career. I'm pretty sure that's the stat. But I don't know if he's ever going to reach Jerry Rice's record, but he keeps doing it. I mean, I wouldn't
He
say
could
that
easily get 3 more. Easily.
I don't think Jerry Rice is consecutive, is it? I don't think it's consecutive seasons.
I don't think that's consecutive.
It's total. So even if he has a bad season here, he can still go and grab that record. But yeah, absolutely. I think he was in the Hall of Fame conversation 3 seasons ago. Even before he won that.
When he won the Super Bowl.
No, even before it. I mean, like, gosh, like he's just one of those guys where, like you said, it doesn't matter who he has at quarterback, and when you put Tom Brady with him, it's just not really fair. It's like, come on, dude. Like, what? Like, what? But he's amazing. Absolutely Hall of Fame. He's going to be a first ballot, and I'm really happy to see it. A&M's doing something good.
all the gigs there. NFL surprise results of the week. We got to call out the Packers 2 weeks in a row. Yeah. Jordan Love, I mean, you beat the Chiefs. You get 267 yards passing, 3 touchdowns with 118 quarterback rating. Once again, yes, the Packers beat the Chiefs. Got that one wrong. I think everybody got that one wrong. 2 questions for you. First question, I think anybody that was watching the game is obviously has this question now. Is this a potential playoff winning or a playoff team in a wild card spot? Obviously, I think the Lions got the division locked up. Mm-hmm. Maybe not locked up, but I think they got that one. And
close, yeah.
If they make the playoffs, it's a for sure thing you're signing Jordan Love. But this kid's at least getting another year. You know what I mean? Minimum. There's no way he's going anywhere after this year, unless they just dumpster dive the rest of the year, which I don't think is going to happen. This is a Packers team that's getting hot at the end of the season, and this is a kid that's been learning behind Aaron Rodgers for the past 3-4 years. So not only is this a team that is a dangerous team, but this is a team that it's hot right now, and their strength of schedule is not anywhere near the top of the league. So if they go on a run, we could see the Green Bay Packers back in the playoffs this year with Jordan Love at the helm.
I think they're one of the hotter teams in the NFL. I mean, They beat the Lions on Thanksgiving. That was a huge upset. They beat the Chiefs. That was a huge upset. And Jordan Love looked like Aaron Rodgers. Just he was watching the way he was playing, watching the way he's throwing the ball. It's obvious he's been sitting behind Aaron Rodgers the past couple of years. Those little fade away throws, those little quick passes, those the sidearm stuff. That's Aaron Rodgers.
Sidearm.
Aaron Rodgers through and through. He looks like Aaron Rodgers, and it's scary because he's getting good, and he's getting pretty good. I mean, he just went out there and destroyed the Chiefs. The Chiefs have had some injuries. I'll give you that, but they're a better defensive unit than they have been in the past. When they won the Super Bowl, when they won Super Bowl against the Niners in that season too, they're a better, I would say, defensive unit than they have been in those seasons. So this is really surprising, and Jordan Love looks really good. If I'm the Green Bay Packers, heck yeah, I'm staying with him. He's looking like $1 million right now. I will say that. And he's kind of channeling that Aaron Rodgers energy, and I'm not here for it, but it's happening. So keep rolling with him. I think they 100% can make a playoff spot, especially with the NFC being as wonky as it is right now. Dallas, I think that number 5 seed is not going to be yours unless one of these teams has some catastrophic event. Those teams being Dallas or Philly in that 5 spot. And I don't know who else would even be in contention for that. A 6-6 team, because isn't that the Packers' record right now? They're 6-6. But
they're 6-6 or 6-7,
or
they just got to 500, because I know they were negative throughout the year, and it's like the fact that they're even here now, and at the beginning of the season, you watch them play, and you're like, oh, they had a pretty decent game at the beginning of the season, but then they just like.
I think the Vikings are in contention too, yeah. But
but Vikings now have quarterback controversy with Dobbs.
I know. It's like a big one too. With that 4 interception.
I didn't pick him up in fantasy this week.
I know.
They said that he's not most likely going to start this week, and it's like, oh, okay, all right, so we're back there with Minnesota. But Justin Jefferson's back this week with Minnesota, so there goes to your point that Minnesota's right there too.
Yeah, I think it's them right now. Packers are right in it. If Packers end the season hot and they go on a winning streak, I think they make that 5 or 6 or a 6 or 7 seed. And are they going to do anything in the playoffs? I don't know. Maybe they can throw an upset here or there, but if they play the Lions, if the Lions are like the number 2 or 3 seed, which they're probably going to be, you never know. I mean, that's a fun game, but yeah, Packers are getting hot, and I would be kind of scared right now because they look really good. Christian Watson is finally starting to come on, as everyone thought he was. He suffered an injury. We're going to see how serious that is. I don't know if they've released anything about that today. I haven't really been looking, but go Pack, go.
It's a big one, and it's a team that's coming on at the end of the season, and you always want to see that if you're a fan. You don't want your team to peak too early. Bengals, last surprise of the week. Jake Browning goes out there and gets a win, takes down the Jaguars, 350 yards, 1 touchdown, and a rating of 115.
Let me just tell you that I don't know if I stand alone in this, but this ruined my fantasy week. By the way, Jake Browning, just an FYI. He went out there and he didn't just do well against the Jags. He destroyed the Jags, and I don't really know if he's being the product of this good Bengals offense with Joe Mixon playing as well as he is, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins doing their things, but he's playing good football right now. I think I saw a stat that in like the past 2 starts that he has had, he's completed like 80% of his passes or something like that, and it's like, dang, this is a good, well-coached football team. Let me tell you that. Zach Taylor is doing everything right with Joe Burrow out. With your biggest player out for the season, they're still competing for that wild card spot. And it's impressive because he's putting up really good numbers. You can go back to when he made that come-in start when Burrow went out, and it's just like, okay, whatever. This first week starting, okay, whatever. But this is his kind of second week starting. He's starting to get a grasp for the offense. He's starting to get comfortable with these receivers, with this offense, and he's cooking. He's cooking. He just beat the Jags on Monday Night Football. He put up like 34 points and he made it look easy. I mean, that dime, that drop in Jamar Chase's hands, like absolute dime. The kid's playing really good football, and Bengals look scary. Who would have thought? I'm impressed. I'm gonna pick him in fantasy. He's gonna do Trevor Lawrence. Goodbye. I don't know what's going
Who
on with
to
him.
who to thunk it? Well, I mean, the reason, my opinion, I mean, Trevor Lawrence goes down late in that game with the ankle injury. He had a high ankle sprain, is what it came out and said. I don't know, understand why he didn't get on the cart. The fact that he walked all the way to the locker room, a high ankle sprain. I've had a high ankle sprain; those suck. I don't even get how he walked. You know what I mean? I had to be carried like a little baby when I got mine. But I think that's the reason that the Jags didn't win that game. You know what I mean? They had the chance to win the game at the end for sure. I think that the Bengals would have lost that game if Trevor Lawrence did not go down on that play, in my opinion. But here's the thing. When you have a quarterback rating of 118 and you have over 350 yards and a tug, what happened, right? Why did you play so well? The Jaguars don't necessarily have a bad defense. They definitely haven't been hitting all the time and all weeks in the NFL, but they're not one of the worst in the NFL. They're definitely not one of the best. But I wouldn't put them at one of the very worst in the league. And this kid diced him up. You know what I mean? Jake Browning diced up the Jags, but here's the big thing. Go look at how many targets, go look at how many receptions Justin Jefferson got. Or you did it, now you're making me do it. Jamar Chase got. There's a reason this kid is one of the best young wide receivers in the game, right up there with CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb and him are right there, right? Justin Jefferson's sitting there at number 1. Those three are right there in contention, right? Jamar Chase is unbelievable. And when you get him the ball or get him anywhere in the direction of him and he gets that ball, he's going to make that catch pretty much every time. And you saw that. And you saw Jake Browning go, you know what? I'm just going to keep feeding this guy the rock. And then occasionally when he would throw to T. Higgins, he would, T. Higgins has got sure hands too, right? Like you've got all these guys with sure hands. And then you have Joe Mixon out of the backfield that catches like a 30-yard pass at the very beginning of the game. It's like, oh, now the running back, we got to worry about the running back too.
Yeah.
Which means you got to take guys off of Jamar Chase. So it's like, just from the beginning, that's the best thing that could have happened with the Bengals. The running back goes out there. They show that they're a threat. The linebackers got to play off a little bit. You know what I mean? The safety's got to come down a little bit to watch the running back. And you open up the rest of the field with Jamar Chase. That's exactly what happened, and that's why they won the game. And Trevor Lawrence getting a high ankle sprain, right? But Bengals look scary. The only way they get in is they have to keep winning. You know what I mean? They have to keep winning. They cannot go on a skid. They have to keep winning. So we'll see what happens in the AFC. Talking matchup preview and picks this week, we got some big ones in the AFC and some big ones in the NFC too. Week 14. Tanner, go ahead and update the listeners. What we did last week. We picked 10 games total last week. What we do here?
I mean, to update the listeners, if you weren't aware, we picked the college games too. We picked the championship games, so those are also factored into this as well, which is the 10 games kind of thing. But we went 5-5. We were both 500. We're looking to make that wild card spot. Overall, I'm 41-27 on the season, and Chad is 42-28. So we're right there neck and neck. It could be anyone's game at the end of the season whenever we're all said and done. I don't know how long we're going to go with this picks kind of thing, but I'm enjoying it. It's been fun. But yeah, we're pretty good at this kind of thing. We're above 500 on the season, and I don't know. I think we're doing pretty well.
Well above 500. You know what I mean? Pat ourselves on the back there. 5-5, tough week. You know what I mean? But to be fair, 3 of the college football games exactly. You had no clue what was going to happen there, and a backup quarterback at Cincinnati, you don't think is going to go in and just beat the crap out of the Jaguars.
Yeah, but they lost me fantasy, dude. That's just mean.
It's not very nice, especially because this pretty much is the last week before fantasy playoffs start, so it's getting real in terms of fantasy. Week 14, we pick the games Thursday night, 3 Sunday games Monday night. No college games to pick this week. Next college games we're going to pick. No, we're not doing all the bowls. We're just going to pick the college football playoff and keep going probably toward the end of the season with NFL. Maybe even into the playoffs. Why not? Anyway, Thursday night, a game that I will not watch, Patriots and Steelers. I got the Steelers.
Yeah, give me the Steelers. I just think you can't pick the Patriots right now. No, they just don't look good. It doesn't matter who's in. Bailey Mac Jones. I think I saw a thing that was like, if you hold your opponents to like less than 10 points, it's like some crazy stat, like you're 51-3. And the Patriots are the three part of that equation this season. They're 0-3 when it comes to holding their opponents below 10 points because they just can't score more than like 6 or 0 in the case of against the Chargers this past week. So they're not good. It sucks to see, but it's like Bill Belichick might be on his way out. It's not something you want, but it's just something that you kind of have to do after a while when you're not winning. You just need a fresh start. I don't know, but give me the Steelers. I trust Mike Tomlin. This team's going to be all right with Trubisky. So
Trubisky over the potential starter of Mac Jones. Just that should tell you all you need to know there. The Steelers are very good. The New England is very good defensively though. So be careful about taking the over. You know what I mean?
It's going to be a low-scoring game. We could very potentially
so.
see a field goal only game.
It could happen, or even better, safety only game. Why the hell not? You know what I mean? Just got to throw that into the mix. Old 2-0 there. Sunday morning, we don't know how. Trevor has a high ankle sprain. I don't think he'll play this week.
I don't think he will.
We'll see. And then we have the Browns, who we don't know what's going to happen with the quarterback that's in concussion protocol. But I'll let you start this one off. You're the Browns guy. Hadn't picked him in a little bit, so had to put him on there. And honestly, one of the only good morning games in terms of positive schedule, or records. A lot of morning games right now are some negative teams going at it. So the Browns and the Jaguars is probably going to be one of the best games in the morning anyway, and it's a battle of probably backups. But who do you got, Tanner?
I'm gonna pick the Browns. It's not a secret, but I just think you saw what happened to the Jaguars on Monday night. You saw how vulnerable that passing game was, and what do the Browns like to do? Well, we talked about it a lot on this podcast. They like to pass the ball, and Joe Flacco looks pretty good. I think, like I said, with another week of practice, I think with a week of preparation against this Jaguars unit, I think they're gonna win. Browns just got to get off to a quick start, and I think their defense is going to hold in check C.J. Beathard for the Jaguars because it's just hard. The Browns have beat up against I'm not going to say bad quarterbacks all year, but at less than average quarterbacks. They've been a good defensive unit all year, and I expect them to continue to do the same thing against this guy who really couldn't move the ball that much against the Cincinnati Bengals. And in my opinion, the Browns defense is better than the Bengals. So it's kind of one of those things. It's like both sides of the ball are pointing towards the Browns. I'm going to go with the Browns.
I'm also going to go Browns there. Sunday afternoon, we got Bills versus the Chiefs. Bills need to win bad. Kansas City isn't necessarily there yet. You know what I mean? But Bills versus Chiefs. This is a big one. Like I said, Bills need one bad. Who do you got this one? Josh Allen, still the number one fantasy quarterback in all season of all players so far. Does he keep it up this week? Does he take down Mahomes, and do the Chiefs lose 2 games in a row?
The Chiefs are not the Chiefs of old. It is becoming very common for teams to go in there and beat the Chiefs. You know what I mean? We've been like, the beginning of the season, the Lions beat the Chiefs. That's crazy. And then we're sitting here now like, the Packers beat the Chiefs. All right, well, it's just like kind of one of those things. It's like, I'm going to pick the Bills. I think the Bills are in a much more critical situation. I don't think that they can lose like almost any of these games if they want to make the playoffs. I want to say they're 6-6, if not very close to that. So, it's not looking good. If you're Buffalo, you need to go on a run to end the season to make the playoffs, and I think that's what they're going to do. It's a tough schedule for them, but I think they're gonna need this one. This is a must-win for them. I think they're going to take it. I think they're going to take the Chiefs.
I was going to go Bills, but since you picked them, I will go Chiefs. But what I will say is that I do think Stephon Diggs is going to have a day.
Yeah.
I think he's going to have an absolute day. I think Josh Allen is, like you said, playing for every game, every week. This week is almost like you're playing playoff football. And Josh Allen has not only shown up in the playoffs, he's excelled in the playoffs and quite literally lost games. Yes, he's had a couple bad playoff games, but at the same time, it's like with Buffalo, it's like he hasn't won in overtime. He doesn't necessarily go that far in the playoffs. You know what I mean? It's like this is the number one quarterback in terms of points right now for fantasy, and like his play this season has been like that, and that shows you just how good of a player he is.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And Buffalo isn't necessarily hitting on every cylinder this year. Like you said, they're 500, very close to it. This is a team that has to win every single week, and if they don't, they could have not get into the playoffs, and that is unacceptable, especially for this franchise.
Yeah.
So I know I said Chiefs. I'm still going to stick with them, but it's going to be a really close game, and I hope it's a Josh Allen against Mahomes, just like the playoffs a couple of years ago. It's going to be a very good game, and that's the afternoon on Sunday. They flexed the Cowboys to Sunday night. Cowboys versus the Eagles. Going to go Cowboys here. Eagles have already won one previously. I said at the beginning of the season that the Cowboys were going to split with the Eagles, go 1-1. Cowboys are at home. They haven't lost at home in a very long time. If any team's going to do it, it's going to be the Eagles because this team is mad. They lost to the 49ers. They got destroyed by the 49ers, and I don't know if I've ever seen Jalen Hurts lose twice, but we'll see what happens. You know what I mean? This is a game right here. If the Dallas Cowboys win this game, the Dallas Cowboys are in the lead and or tied for the NFC East. Boom. The Eagles have an easier schedule to end out the season 100%.
Mm-hmm.
So this is honestly a must-win game for Dallas because it goes to division and then it goes to overall record, then it goes to division, right? So this is a must-win game by Dallas. And if Dak wouldn't have stepped out last time when they were in Philadelphia, this could potentially be a whole different conversation. So I think Dak is going to continue to play like he does at home. I think if Brock Purdy, no disrespect, dimed up Philly like he did, I think Dallas can do the same. Now, here's the thing. Big Play Slay is going to be on CD. Big Play Slay, we'll see what happens because I'm never going to say anybody's lost a step, but there's points in the season where he's looked a little slow. And CD Lamb has looked a little fast. So I'm gonna go Dallas. Who do you got here?
I'm going to go Dallas too. I think you kind of hit it right on the head, but I want to extend that point with Darius Slay to the entire secondary of the Philadelphia Eagles. They have not looked good. They have not looked good. I want to say they're one of the highest allowed in like passing touchdowns and stuff like that when it comes to secondaries and stuff in the NFL. I could be wrong with that, but it's up there. They're not doing well at all when it comes to defending against the pass. So Dak Prescott has looked really good against this Philadelphia team in years past and in this year. I mean, he put up 300 yards and 3 touchdowns the last time they played. I expect him to do the same thing when he's comfortable at home. He's got his fan base behind him, and I like it. I like them splitting the series 1-1. I think they're pissed that they lost last time. I think Philly's pissed that they lost to the Niners last week. And I mean, what would be the cherry on top for Dallas if you can go and tell Philadelphia, oh, by the way, you're the 5 seed now? I think that they're going to have a lot of extra motivation for this game because I don't know. I think that they want to beat Philly really, really bad because that they really haven't shown that they can beat a good team. A lot of stuff is going around. They're like, oh, Dallas is not a good team. They got to beat a good team. Well, they just beat Seattle. If you go out there and beat Philadelphia, that's a pretty good team. So I think Dallas is going to have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder. They're at home, like I said. CeeDee Lamb's playing outstanding. Dak's playing outstanding. It's hard to pick against them. I want to say they come into this game as a favorite. That's like a 3-point favorite or something like that. But it's gonna be a barn burner. It's gonna be an absolute barn burner. It's going down to the wire. It always does. So tune in. It's gonna be probably the highest rated Sunday Night Football game I would say all year.
Definitely have to agree with everything there. And Philly, like I said, haven't seen Jalen Hurts lose back to back, so that's going to be the big thing. And these defenses both did not look good the previous week. So the big thing out of Dallas is that you really want to see that defense playing Jalen Hurts a little bit better, but it doesn't get necessarily any easier. You were going against DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, and Jackson Smith and Jigba. Now you're going against A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. I don't think Dallas Goedert's going to be back yet, but you're missing that playmaker there. Dallas's defense has not looked great on the run. Philadelphia's defense has not looked great on the run, so I do think that this could be a game where the Dallas Cowboys utilize Tony Pollard a little bit more, potentially on the outside. Maybe don't run it in to the freaking Georgia Bulldogs, you know what I mean, that are the Philadelphia Eagles sitting there at defensive tackle with Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis. Please don't run the ball down the middle, Dallas. You know what I mean? Run it the outside. Get Zach Martin on his right shoulder, not on his inside left shoulder, right? I think it's pretty simple. You're going to do, and you had success in Philadelphia, and that's a hard place to play. And you had success, and Dak's been playing better at home. I think the defense plays a little bit better at home, aside from last week. You know what I mean? They just didn't look good, but defense has got to get back to it. You know, Dan Quinn's going to be really coaching those guys. But same thing on the side with the Eagles, and everybody on both of those teams know this is a must-win game.
Yep.
If Philadelphia wants to win the NFC East and they win this game, it's going to be very hard for them to lose the NFC East. If they lose this game, it could come down to the last game of the season. You know what I mean? It could come down to the last game of the season. So we'll see what happens there. We're both going Cowboys as well. Monday night, we were just talking about Jordan Love and the Packers, and to end the episode, this is the last pick we're going to have. The Monday night game, like I said, the Packers versus the Giants. The Giants not only have not looked good this season, they're the worst team in the NFC East, which I thought Washington was, going to take that slot, but they didn't. The Giants have just not looked good all season. Daniel Jones goes down with a torn ACL right at the beginning of the season. The offense just can't move the ball unless your name's Saquon Barkley. The defense hasn't looked good at all either. In Giants and Washington, just got to call out Sam Howell again. He didn't play that well last week, but the fact that this kid was number one in the league in passing yards is absolutely insane.
Crazy.
But Packers versus the Giants, I think the Packers are going to destroy the Giants. I think Jordan Love, if you have him in fantasy this week and you need a win to get into the playoffs, this is a guy you definitely want to start. And I would take the over on this game because the Giants defense has just looked like shredded cheese this whole year. Give me the Packers.
I like the Packers too. I think it's gonna be a lot closer than people are expecting because Tommy DeVito, the quarterback for the Giants right now, is actually playing a lot of really good ball. The passing paisano, I think, is my favorite nickname I've heard from him. I think Saquon's calling him Tommy Cutlets or something like that, but it's fun. He embodies New York, and I love it. I don't think he's gonna win.
That guy's awesome.
I mean, he had his coming out party against Dallas, and that was just like, come on, he didn't like win, but like he played pretty well against that defense. But give me the Packers. I think the Giants are gonna make it a fight, though. I think it's gonna be a one-score game. I'm not gonna say by how much because I'm not really sure, but I think it's gonna be a one-score game. I think the Packers are gonna struggle here and there, but I think they'll ultimately get the win at the end of the day.
Go Pack, go. Anything else, or should we end this thing, Tanner?
I mean, I think I'm good. We're just. This time next week, I could be in the sweater of sadness, as I like to call it, or I could be in the triumphant victory. I don't know, a piece of clothing that starts with V. V-neck. Oh God, I'm not wearing that. But
the fact that you already promised it. Better see V-neck next episode.
I don't own a V-neck. I'm sorry.
All right, folks. See you next week.
Bye-bye.